Hello, 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 Eureka Whiskey Club members. Welcome to August edition of Eureka Whiskey Club virtual tasting. As always, Trevor here. Hope everyone's having a great August. It's been quite warm here in Southern California, and most of California and Nevada, where all our members are, have experienced similar heat waves. So hopefully, you've been able to pour yourself a nice whiskey and put it on a big cube and relax in the hot weather. Preferably by a body of water somewhere. But kind of trying to be festive today with my little floral shirt here. Celebrate the last few weeks of summer, but happy to be featuring our Larceny barrel pick this month, and we'll get into all things Heaven Hill and Larceny with our guest here in a minute. As always, just wanted to run down some keeping and announcements. So we did release our Whistle Pig 12-year bespoke rye pick. I've had this bottle for probably about 6 months, so that's why there's a big dent in it, or barely any left, but it is delicious. That was picked last year by two of our top performing general managers, Spencer Pearson and Justin Christensen. Spencer is currently the GM of our Las Vegas Eureka. He recently transferred there from San Diego, so if you're a Vegas member, go say hi to Spencer, and maybe he'll convince you to buy a bottle of the whiskey he picked. And then Justin Christensen was used to be our GM of Bakersfield. He's been with the company for over 10 years. And since he picked this bottle, he's been promoted to a regional director. So if you're in the Central Coast or Central Valley regions, you may see Justin in one of those restaurants. But just wanted to give those gentlemen a quick shout out, as usually I'm the one that picks the whiskey, and this time they picked the whiskey, and it's a phenomenal pick. So that's the Whistle Pig 12-year bespoke, and that is $75 a bottle, and every restaurant should have it. Nevada, we got a slight delay in the distribution there, so those restaurants should be getting their Whistle Pig late next week. So maybe wait to go see Spencer. But without further ado, I'm sorry, a couple more things. Just some quick announcements for next month. We will be released. Next month is Bourbon Heritage Month. We're super excited about that. We're going to be hosting Bourbon Heritage dinners partnered with Buffalo Trace. So Whiskey Club members, you'll be getting more info about that. The dinner's valued around $85, but we'll be charging $50 a ticket. It's a 3-course dinner, and we're really excited to start selling tickets. So you should be receiving some more info about that, how to buy tickets, where to buy tickets. We're going to be selling through Eventbrite, so keep an eye out for that. Some exciting releases for next month. We will be releasing a Elijah Craig barrel-proof barrel pick. That should be released on pickup day next month. And then for our more tenured members, we will be releasing another Stag Junior pick, and then also an E.H. Taylor single barrel pick. But most likely that will be open to people that have been in the club for, I'm not quite sure yet, but it's either going to be a 2-year or a 1-year, 10-year eligibility. But those are some exciting announcements or picks coming up as well. But without further ado, we're going to bring on our esteemed guest. And before we do that, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and Heaven Hill has been so kind. So tonight's prizes. So before we introduce our guests, get your questions ready about all things Heaven Hill and Larceny. This is a big one, folks. Well, we'll just start with second place. Second place is going to get a Heaven and Hill Bottled and Bond Holderness and Bourne Brody jacket. It's like a $175 jacket. It's super nice. And then first place, again, this is a big one. So get your questions ready. This will be a tough pick, first prize. But this is going to be a edition Old Fitzgerald 9-year, and that bottle's valued somewhere around $300. So I'd like to introduce Jack, and I apologize, Jack, I didn't ask you how you pronounce your last name, so hopefully I don't butcher it. Jack Choti, who is the North American Advocacy Manager and Heaven Hill Distillery Whiskey Educator. So Jack, pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Trevor. Thanks for having me. You were close on my last name. It's just Choke, but I've heard it botched way worse than that. So
got it.
I appreciate it.
Well, normally I ask. I apologize for not doing that first.
It's okay.
That's
I
on
knew
me.
it was coming because I was like, he didn't ask me how to say my last name. This is going to be interesting. Let's go. I was pulling for
Nice.
you, though. You were close.
So, Jack's joining us from, I don't think we've ever had anybody call from Mexico City before, but Jack's calling us from Mexico City. He's doing a brand launch for, what'd you say, Evan Williams?
Evan Williams and Elijah Craig. There's not a big bourbon culture down here outside of the international hotels. And I actually have one person on my team based here in Mexico City, and his job is basically to introduce Heaven Hill Distillery bourbons and other whiskeys, as well as some of the other products to the Mexican industry and the Mexican consumer. We'll see how it goes. We've been getting a lot of requests from importers and distributors via their customers down here over the last decade or so. So we shall see. But yeah, I'm heading out of here right after this to go to that event. So I apologize if my internet is a little spotty. I can't tell if there's a delay or not, but
oh, you're good right now.
Okay, great.
So yeah, just I guess tell us about your history. What led you to Heaven Hill? How long have you been there, and what's your responsibilities as the North American Advocacy Manager and Heaven Hill Distillery Whiskey Educator?
It is a mouthful.
I need to put some more words in your title.
Yeah, definitely. We actually tried to do less, but then other people got put more words, and I was like, well, I need more words. At the end of the day, I have the somewhat enviable task of traveling mostly the U.S. And a little bit internationally, spreading the good word of what we're doing at Heaven Hill, and specifically Heaven Hill Distillery, which is where we make all of the distillate becomes all of the brands that hopefully your viewers tonight know and love: Evan Williams, Elijah Craig, Fighting Cock, JTS Brown, JW Dant, Mellow Corn, Pikesville, Larceny, Old Fitzgerald, Rittenhouse Rye, Bernheim, Wheat Whiskey. The list can go on and on. I think we've got about 100 different labels in distribution around the world. But Heaven Hill is a distillery, is a distilling company that started about 90 years ago. We celebrate our 90th anniversary on December 13th of this year. So wherever any of you are, please raise a glass of hopefully one of these fine single barrel picks from Eureka. There's a bunch, and they look pretty tasty. But so yeah, that's been my job. Is I travel the world doing consumer events very similar to this, but in person. I assist and support our sales team in really teaching them and our distributor partners how best to sell our products in different situations. And yeah, I get to experience some of the finer things in life, some of the finer bars and restaurants. I'm a big fan of Eureka, as we were talking in the pre-call. I live just around the corner from the experimental spot, which is on Crenshaw and the 105 in LA.
Yeah, pretty much.
Spot.
Yeah,
great spot.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And
then how long did you say you've been with Heaven Hill?
I've been here 11 years.
Oh, wow.
So I actually started on the sales team. I've lived in California, primarily a little bit in Southern California, a little bit in the Bay Area for 20 years. But I come from the Southeast, Georgia specifically, and bourbon had always been a part of my family celebrations. And I randomly got paired up with a guy on a golf course when we started talking whiskey, and 6 months later, he was my boss. So
that's cool.
That's how I got here.
Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how you mentioned that bourbon is kind of woven into celebrations in your family? Can you talk a little bit about what that entails, and then how that kind of has translated into how you talk to people about whiskey now and get people excited about whiskey now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, quite honestly, it's how I do my job. I mean, as I said, bourbon was always a part of celebrations of my family. And, where it goes back to for me was the fall of 1979 when I was teething and my mother was coming home from University of Georgia football games and giving me a little bit of the Old Forester that she was drinking. And yes, I said Old Forester, that she was drinking, putting it on my gums to help with my teething. And I think that just stuck with me. Right. And, you fast forward, I was 10 years old and my dad took us to the Caribbean. And I'll never forget me sitting there with him talking to a bartender and just sort of talking regular and becoming friends, so much so that the next day we were over in his neighborhood watching his neighborhood's cricket team play with he and his family. And that's just sort of the approach that I've always taken with these spirits. They're to elevate life, they're to celebrate, they're to cheers good times. And I try not to take myself too seriously. I try not to take the content too seriously, because at the end of the day, what do we like to do when we sit around, drink whiskey, is tell stories and BS. So that really is how I see it. And I think that, the Southern hospitality, whatever you want to refer to that as these days, has just sort of woven into the overall culture of our industry. I mean, you see the elevation of, again, Southern cuisine, just sort of proliferating the country. Bourbon was there at the right moment when it was needed to be a part of that. As it was rising, it was paralleling with the bourbon renaissance. And the bourbon industry as a whole, where it is now, is just in an amazing place. And it's a great industry to work in. And for me personally, I'm never happier, except right now, I'm never happier than when I'm sitting across a bar from a bartender talking about these whiskeys, or asking them how their day was as we're enjoying one of these whiskeys. I'm gonna enjoy some.
Nice. Yeah, me too. Cheers.
Salud.
So let's kind of go back and talk about the Heaven Hill history. So Heaven Hill is the largest independent family-owned distillery in the United States. And as you mentioned, it was founded in 1935 by the Shapira family. And the Shapira family is still heavily involved. Can you talk, there's the owners, right? Like, can you talk
Yes.
about, that legacy, and that it stayed with the same family pretty much the entire time? And what does that heritage mean to you and the whole Heaven Hill family?
Yeah, I mean, it means everything. It's the way that we wake up, and it affects the way that we wake up and do business every day. So the quick story, Harry and Joe Beam were distillers, and you probably recognize their last name. They had returned to Bardstown at the repeal of Prohibition, and they found property to build a distillery on with a great water source. The only problem was they didn't have any money. And that's where the Shapira family entered the equation. They were clothiers. They owned what I like to refer to as like rural Targets in and around central Kentucky. So they were well placed when Harry and Joe met with them and presented them this opportunity to invest about $20,000, which is somewhere between $750 and $1 million in today's money, to buy this land from the Heaven Hill family and build a distillery. And in about 24 hours, they made the decision, because everyone wanted to get back into bourbon at repeal. They started building. They wanted to name the distillery after the land, so they named it the Old Heaven Hill Springs Distillery. And when they sent their business license request to the state of Kentucky, they approved it and they sent it back, but they put a space between the name Heaven and Hill because the family name was Heaven Hill. If people are familiar with the bottles that you can get from our visitor center, the William Heaven Hill collection, that is who had passed away and had made the farm available. So we picked up the phone and called the state of Kentucky. And there you go. Called the state of Kentucky and said, "Hey, you misspelled our name." And they go, "Oh, no problem. Send us a $25 relicensing fee and we'll take care of it for you." And we were like, "No, we're good. We're not getting more money. We don't even know what we're doing." As Max Shapira, whose father and 4 brothers it was who did it, says, "My dad and my uncles didn't know the difference between a barrel and a box, but they had pretty good acumen behind them and the skills of Harry and Joe Beam." So the family has pretty much owned it since go. Harry and Joe relinquished any ownership stake that they had in about 1937 or so. All of those details have sort of been lost to time. Not a lot was being written down in the bourbon industry, I've learned, until about 2005 or maybe even 2010. So yeah, Ed, Gary, George, David, and Mo Shapira ran the company. Ed Shapira had sort of minded the store, if you will. And then when his son was old enough, Max Shapira came to join his dad in the executive suite in 1972, and then took over from his last surviving uncle in the mid-90s as president of the company. and he was president until 2 or 3 years ago. I don't even know what day it is right now, but and then so his daughter Kate Shapiro Latz and her husband Alan Latz are now the co-presidents, and Max is the chairman. And it's basically the three of them that make the decisions, primarily Kate and Alan, with a little bit of guidance from the chairman. And that's how we're able to do some of the things that we're able to do. We're able to, we generally speaking, when you compare Heaven Hill bottles across Kentucky, our stuff is in the bottle a little bit older and a little bit higher proof, and it usually costs 5 to 25% less. So that's something that we're able to do because we're family owned and operated. We don't have outside investors to report to talk to about their return on their investment, and it allows Max and Kate and Alan and the rest of our team to be able to continue doing what the founders did, which they learned from their dad, who had immigrated from Lithuania as a traveling salesman. Offer our customers the best possible product at the best possible price. And we feel like we do that day in and day out. So being family owned and operated is a crazy thing, especially in the world right now of spirits. You look at CEOs that are jumping ship. You look at companies that are selling facilities and laying off more than 10% of their workforce, and we're actually adding people. So
yeah, what do you attribute that success to in recent times with kind of all the tumultuous changes? And they saying that bourbon consumption is not drastically going down, but there is potentially a decline in whiskey consumption in the United States. How does Heaven Hill continue to stay on top of everything?
Yeah, I mean, Heaven Hill has look at every one of the legacy distilleries, right? And that's us, Brown-Forman, Beam, Woodford, Four Roses, Wild Turkey, 1792, Buffalo Trace, and then there's a couple of separate ones inside there, Maker's Mark, Woodford. I think I just named all of them perfectly for the first time. We've all experienced the downtimes before, right? And that for us, some could say that our downtime was even worse than theirs because we had a horrific fire in November of '96 that destroyed 100,000 barrels, 7 rickhouses, and our ability to make more in the distillery that was at the bottom of the hill where the fire went to. So when you look at it now, I think the Shapiras and our executives have always looked at it as a marathon. I think the current climate is probably testing them a little bit, but what I say to them is, and our CFO backed me up on this a few months ago, look at where we were in 2015 and look at where we still are now, right? There's a lot more bourbon out there. There's still a lot more bourbon being consumed than there was 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. When we're looking at when we're in our executive rooms and roundtables and we're looking at the returns based off of the numbers in 2021 and 2022, that's not as good. But I still see excitement out there. I still attend packed houses for events like this, and it's not to hear me speak. It's because people want to taste the bourbon, the exclusive whiskeys, right? So I'm still bullish on it. I remember having conversations in the late teens saying like something's got to right itself at some point. And to be honest, then I was talking about more of just the little cocktail bars that seem to be opening everywhere. It's like you'd meet a bar back in San Francisco or Denver or Oklahoma City, and the next time you were there a year later, they own their own bar. And I was like, how in the world is the community going to support all that? So I think there had to be some form of a righting of the ship. And the pandemic and everything that's been going on was, I don't think anybody, as Max often says in the 90s or 80s and 90s, he wishes he and his dad had a crystal ball because they would have built the distillery that we just started distilling from back then to double our capacity. So we had more during, the 2018 to 2022 time. But yeah, I'm still bullish on it and still very excited about it. And, case in point of the fact that I'm in Mexico City and we have an entire population that really doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, good thing they didn't build that before '96, though, right?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, there wasn't room at the bottom of that hill for another one, so who knows?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about the fire, but you addressed it already. So,
yeah,
let's talk a little bit.
To the fire. I was in high school when it happened, but if anybody wants to check out my Instagram, it's just JackChoate16. November 7th, 2022, which would have been the 26th anniversary of the fire. I did one of these just like you and I are doing with our artisanal distiller Jody Filiatru, who was there that day. He was working in the rick house, and he basically gave me a whole rundown of everything that was going on that day. So feel free to go check that out. My account's public, so you can watch it. You don't even have to follow me.
You want to say the account one more time if people miss
sure,
it?
I mean, JackChoate16. JackChoate16.
I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah.
Let's get into the history of larceny here for a little bit. Can you share the story of Johnny Fitzgerald and kind of how his legacy inspired the larceny brand?
Yeah, for sure. So Heaven Hill is the only distillery in America that makes every single style of American whiskey as defined by the U.S. Standards of Identity. And outside of the newest classification, U.S. single malt, which just became a classification this year, wheated bourbon was the last one that we ever made. It was the last one we acquired of the others. Because until 1982, we were only making bourbon. Then we started making rye, corn whiskey. We made some malt. Now wheated bourbon, and then we made a wheat whiskey because we messed up trying to make wheated bourbon. So we acquired the Bernheim facility, the Bernheim distillery, which we still have today, which does more than the lion's share of our distilling. We make 1,500 barrels of whiskey a day there. But we acquired that from United Distillers, who was a British-owned company that decided American whiskey was dead, and they got rid of their primary distillery as well as some of their most historic brands, and one of those was Old Fitzgerald. So we brokered a deal where we got the distillery, we got Old Fitzgerald, which is a former Stitzel-Weller product, as well as Cabin Still, which is also a former Stitzel-Weller product. And then we got I believe we got a vermouth, and we got Christian Brothers brandy in that deal. And the way that I liken to it is like a 3-team deal in the NBA. We brought in Sazerac, and we brought in Luxco out of St. Louis, and we sort of brokered. Sazerac got Weller at that transaction. Luxco got Rebel Yell, now known as Rebel, and David Nicholson. All of those were all wheated bourbon brands from Stitzel-Weller. So we started making wheated bourbon as we did with most of our regional brands. I mentioned JTS Brown and JW Dant earlier. TW Samuels is another one. Where when we acquired these historic brands that really didn't have much of a following, we historically had put whatever we were making into the bottles, and we shipped them off to those states. With Old Fitz, we of course had to start to make wheated bourbon. So there had been some rumblings that the mash bill at Stitzel-Weller was 70% corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley. So we aligned it more so to our Heaven Hill mash bills, which all have at a minimum 12% malted barley, which is what Parker Beam and Earl Beam before him, his dad before him, thought that was necessary to make that natural enzymatic reaction happen, converting the starches to fermentable sugars. So we did 68, 20, 12, and we started making Old Fitz, and we sent it to Alabama, we sent it to Illinois, Wisconsin, a little bit to California, Washington, a little bit in Kentucky. And the same year we acquired the brand in '99, Pappy Van Winkle's granddaughter, Sally Van Winkle, wrote a book called Always Find Bourbon, which is the statement that Pappy put on the one of the plaques outside of the distillery at Stitzel-Weller. And in the book, she details the true story of John Fitzgerald, this person that Old Fitzgerald's named for. And she details that via the last interview with the last distiller at Old Judge Distillery, which is where Van Winkle acquired the brand from in September of 1933, right before repeal. And in that interview, he states that Fitzgerald, as Pappy had always said, was not a distiller, was not a taster. He worked at the distillery. He did not work for the distillery. If you're unaware, from about 1880 until 1983 or so, there was a U.S. government agent, a Treasury agent on site at all the distilleries, gauging and re-gauging barrels for fill levels, making sure that the barrels weren't losing anything, so that the government was going to get all their tax money. If you're unaware, we pay about 60 cents on the dollar of every bottle we sell, primarily to the federal government and then to the Kentucky government. So there's a lot of finance involved in bourbon. So it was very important to make sure that the government was getting their money. And Fitzgerald was that Treasury agent. And in his job, he had keys and was sneaking in the middle of the night to the rick houses and stealing sips, not just from the best barrels, but all of the barrels, therefore committing larceny. So it was a known story inside the dump room and the bottling house back then, that whatever the lighter barrels that came out, they were stamped Fitzgerald. So those went directly into the old Fitzgerald brand. And, I know we're not all together, but you can see the back bar behind me, the back bar behind you, Trevor. Like, every one of those bottles has some sort of marketing story, right? Let me tell you, when you're on a marketing team inside a spirits company and a story like that gets handed to you in a book by someone like that, Sally Van Winkle, you're gonna create a brand out of that. So we created Johnny Fitzgerald's Larceny in 2012 to tell the true story of John Fitzgerald. And where that works in from sort of a business standpoint is, I talked about, generally when you look at us in comparison to the other distilleries from Kentucky, where generally our whiskey is generally a little bit older, a little bit higher proof, a little bit less expensive. We really wanted to get some market share in that Maker's Mark platform, right? Wheated bourbon has gained a lot of popularity in the last 10, 12 years. But what a lot of people don't realize is they've been drinking wheated bourbon since 1957 when they were drinking Mark. Maker's Mark is the number 3 selling in the world. And we were like, well, now we got wheated bourbon. We want to play in that pool with them and see if we can compete. So we went right at them with our house style, 92 proof, and then the whiskey in Larceny is anywhere from 6 to 8 years. We're generally looking at like a 5 to 10 year window on products like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know the name. I didn't know the story behind the brand, so that's super cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. If you like having coffee table books about bourbon, it's called Always Find Bourbon and the True Story of John Fitzgerald.
Nice. I'll check it out. Yeah. But okay. So I have one more question before we get into the tasting portion of this of the call. Heaven Hill, obviously, like you stated, you have a depth of product that you produce. You said you are the only distillery that produces, every possible type of whiskey that could be processed by a distillery based in the United States. That being said, I know the property's huge. I had the pleasure of going there. Been there 3 times, but I last was there in November and had the pleasure of selecting all these Larceny barrels in person, as well as the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof that we're releasing next month. We got 2 of those barrels, so that was obviously an amazing experience. But is there a particular warehouse or aging location on property that you like the best, and what comes out of there?
Rickhouse Y is probably my favorite, and it's probably because it's the one that I've been in the most. And it's probably because it has just the oldest barrels in it, and it just it has this great feeling in there when you go in. It's generally colder in the wintertime and warmer in the summertime than it is outside, which is just a weird feeling in and of itself. But you're really walking through history. We had the Rickhouse that just looking at the Rickhouses where you guys pulled the barrels from. And if I'm just looking at the Larceny picks, you guys have something like 6 or 7 picks. That's amazing. You guys have us pretty much covered. You've got the Heaven Hill main campus, which is right there. H1, which is the Rick House that you did the barrel picks in with Sylvia. Did you pick with Sylvia?
Yeah.
She's fantastic. She just got a promotion. She's wonderful.
Oh,
and then you've got 2 from Deatsville. And Deatsville is the warehouse or the 3 warehouses that everybody said was Parker Beam's honey hole, where he picked the first barrels that became Evan Williams single barrel, where he picked a lot of Henry McKenna single barrels from. So, when you talk about walking through history, those are definitely historical. They originate from the old T.W. Samuels distillery, which is the family name of the founders of Maker's Mark. Their predecessor sold it right around World War II or right at the end of World War II. I can't remember. And we're not able to buy it back when they came into money to be able to build what is now Maker's Mark. But at some point that distillery sold. We got the brand actually. We got plus 3 rick houses. Maker's Mark got 3 rick houses, and then a private citizen owns a defunct distillery. But those are the only. If anybody's has the ability to look while we're on the call, if you go to heavenhilldistillery.com and then into the Whiskey 101 section, and you can see our rick houses, and you can actually click on them. The ones at Deatsville are actually cathedral style. So a regular rick house is basically just going to be straight walls, 7 stories, and then a roof. The cathedral ones are basically 5 stories, and then they slant in, and then they go up straight, narrower, sort of like a steeple, and then they go up top. They're really very cool. We don't get over there very often with tours or whatever, but I try to, if I'm ever in a car by myself or I can control the driver, I try to sneak over there so that we can just take a peek at them, because it's just so awesome to go to these huge buildings. You think about the process of making bourbon, right? And we're getting something like 27 grain 18-wheelers full of grains a day. They were generally from the season closest to us. And then, it's basically grains and water with yeast, but then it gets put into this level 3 char barrel. And that comes from an oak tree that 80 years ago was an acorn. 80 to 100 years ago was an acorn, and now is becoming a barrel, right? So you think about the history and the length of time and the process in its entirety. And then you think about these buildings that were built in the 30s and 40s that they're all being housed in. It's just a wonderful, romantic thing to think about. It's one of the reasons that I love the bourbon industry so much.
On the Deatsville one, what's the I was trying to look it up in an email. Do you know what the abbreviations for the rick houses are? Like I have EE.
Yeah, the 2 double E ones are Deatsville. The H1, okay. The H1 is the building that you did the tasting in, and then M and F are on that campus near H1.
Cool. Yeah, I have Deatsville floor 4, 124 proof. So
yeah, that's what I remember. Asked. Did you get them? Are all the barrel picks at barrel proof?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I know I've always liked Larceny. I was super pumped to be able to go in person and get that guided tour from Sylvia. I think when I was there was like a lobbyist or something there as well from like the state of Kentucky. It was kind of a funny situation, but it was a good time selecting the barrels. But
yeah, you literally never know who's going to pop up at one of those events. Like sometimes the governor will just be there randomly.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good time. So we're gonna move into the tasting portion here because I want to get to questions because we gotta keep the thing moving.
Yeah.
But I'm tasting as always. Everyone got the card. I unfortunately don't have mine with me, but I have my tasting notes here. So as always, every barrel is with single barrels when we're not doing a blend or we're not doing a micro blend or it's a true single barrel, everyone's going to have slightly different tasting notes. Every barrel is a little bit different. So my tasting notes may not be the same as yours. I absolutely love my barrel, and I hope you love yours. This had like the most like beautiful like maple vanilla, like pretty much like, I don't want to like it was super sweet. It just had very nice sweet characteristics. Like it wasn't like cloyingly sweet or overly sweet. It just kind of like hit the nose right on the head. So as always in the chat, feel free to comment what barrel you have and throw in your tasting notes. Again, I'm tasting Rickhouse EE 44 barrel number 8088549. I think there was another Dietsville in there as well. And mine is 124 proof. But yeah, my tasting notes on the nose are maple, oak, vanilla, Nutella, brownie batter. And then on the palate, I get butterscotch, caramel, toffee, a little bit of cola, molasses, and then pecan pie. And then the finish is, for me, long and lingering with notes of molasses and oak. So let's go to the chat here. We'll see if anybody else has any tasting notes of their pick. Trying to scan here.
That
Go
pie,
ahead.
that pie that you mentioned is actually pronounced pecan. I love getting into that discussion. The Georgia way to say it is pecan, and it's almost pecan everywhere else.
Well, I will. I'll work when I'm in the South. I'll make sure I pronounce it.
It's not a strict South thing. I got into a very big discussion over it at Tails in New Orleans this year with some Louisianans.
Ah, nice. Mark Horowitz says tons of butterscotch. Long finish in a hug. Angie F says nutty, vanilla, charred marshmallow. The cookie brings out a lot and tastes so good. All right, yeah, just keep throwing your. Maybe we'll get a few more, but if you have any other tasting notes, feel free to put them in the chat. We're gonna go into your song selections here, and then we'll move into questions. Just a reminder on the prizes we're giving away tonight. Yeah. Second place prize is the Heaven Hill jacket. And then the first place prize, which is the big one, is the 15th edition Old Fitzgerald 9-year, valued around $300 a bottle. So get your questions in. Let's have your song selections right here, unless you remember them, Jack. You want to talk to us about, you selected Jane's Addiction, Been Caught Stealing, and Willie Nelson Whiskey River. You want to tell us a little bit why you picked those in relation to larceny? I can kind of see the theme already, but with the stealing and the Whiskey River. So yeah.
I mean, when I got the request, I was like, I mean, the song that probably goes through my mind probably most of the time of any of the songs that go through my mind, and it's a lot, is Whiskey River. And I'm not going to sing it for you. But I was like, if we got to pick a song, if there's a song playlist about whiskey, and I was like, come on, I can't be somebody's got to pick Whiskey River by Willie Nelson, and no one had. And I was like, damn, I'm taking it. It's like getting people are doing fantasy football drafts now, right? That's like getting the stud quarterback that everybody forgot about or something, I think. But yeah, I mean, I talk about Whiskey Rivers all the time. Being the Whiskey River that flowed downhill on fire. We don't want to talk about that one anymore, knock on wood. But we actually did bottle a bourbon for Willie Nelson called Whiskey River. There is I think it was in like 2008 or 9. We did it for a couple of years, and it came with a guitar pick. But I absolutely love that. I love that song. And when I didn't really know if there were any parameters as far as the song choices, and that is one of the songs that I think of quite often. I think whenever I put music onto Instagram posts when I'm at whiskey bars, it generally is that one. So I couldn't think of a better one. And then I grew up skateboarding in the 90s, and Jane's Addiction, man. And if we're talking about larceny, it's the best song that I could think of from a stealing perspective. I mean, R.I.P. Jane's Addiction. They tried to come back, and then Perry Farrell went crazy on stage. So I don't think we're going to see them anymore. But evidently, he's very nice. I had some friends that hung out with him at Lollapalooza a couple of weeks ago in Chicago. But yeah, I've always loved that record, and I really enjoyed listening to the Eureka Whiskey playlist after doing my research. I'm always looking for new stuff. I use Spotify a lot, and I now just use the DJ feature so that I don't have to make any decisions.
Nice. Yeah, I got one choice. This is the jazz musician named Don Ellis. It's a song called A New Country from the 1968 album Shock Treatment. And it's kind of just like this chaotic trumpet, drum, just
cool.
I've recently found this album. David Byrne did like this feature on What's in My Bag, which is like a YouTube series where different people go into Amoeba Records and they like just pick different records and talk about like how they influence them. And he was talking about this record and they were playing a few of the songs, and I was like, wow, this is really good. So
I'll have to check that out. I love David Byrne. I love Amoeba, and I love the idea of that podcast.
Yeah, so it's called Don Ellis, New Kind of Country, and it's from the 1968 album Shock Treatment. If you're
okay, cool.
We'll add it to the playlist. So
okay, cool.
Let's get into questions. Oh shoot, I think I closed that window. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I just lost it for a second. All right, we're going to dive into questions here. So we'll start at the top. I had one question. Sorry, before we get into this, I meant to ask it. So, with any special plans right now for the 100-year anniversary that's going to be in 10 years?
That's a great question.
You know of.
That is a great question. I imagine they started thinking about that 5 or 10 years ago. I have not heard anything. I know we have a special bottling coming out to commemorate the 90th, but I would imagine that there's going to be something fun for the 100th for sure.
Got it. This is a question about tequila, but I know that you guys have a tequila brand as well. So noticed a few tequila bottles aged in bourbon lately. Do you have any favorites? Anything special in the works at Heaven Hill?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yes, we always have. So one of the things that I guess a lot of people don't know is that the majority of spirits around the world that are aged in barrels outside of America, and even beers and wines in America, are aged in ex-bourbon casks. So the majority of Reposado tequilas that you've had, going back for a long time, the majority of añejos, the majority of extra añejos have all been aged in ex-bourbon barrels. That's the number 2 line item on our P&L. Selling vodka and then selling used barrels, because to be a bourbon, you can only use the barrel one time. So yeah, we have 2 different tequila distilleries. We have one in the Valley of Tequila called Tierra de Agave, and a fantastic brand called Luna Azul, and another brand called Primero, which is Luna Azul's higher end expression, come out of there. And then we have Tequila Ocho out of the Highlands, Los Enriques. And we just this spring released an Old Fitz barrel aged añejo, Tequila Ocho. We also we introduced an extra añejo on Luna Azul during the pandemic, and it was so limited. We didn't really market it at all, and it was gone, and we hadn't planned to make any more because we'd actually done some other barrel tequila, or excuse me, American whiskey finishes that didn't go over that well. So it took us 3 years. It wasn't until 2023 that we were able to have an extra añejo out on Luna Azul, because it takes 3 years. Extra añejo has to be 36 months old. aged in a barrel. So yeah, there's a lot, and you're starting to see a lot of the ones from other bourbon distilleries throughout Kentucky that also have tequila relationships starting to really highlight the ones that they've had for a while too. I think the first part of your question is that you sort of grew up with tequila in LA as part of a celebration. And I think where bourbon was in maybe the South, and the way tequila has been in California and the Mexican border states and Texas, like now the masses are definitely on to both bourbon and tequila. I think tequila now is probably the favored child. So it'll be fun to watch everything that we're doing out of there.
Ken Allard wants to know, do you ever attend a customer's barrel pick and try something that's just amazing and you have to put it aside for something special if they don't select it?
Yes, that has happened to me before, but it's such a well-oiled machine that Sylvia, that Trevor did the tasting with, if we will talk about something like that, she's like, oh, don't worry, this is going to go to this next guy or whatever. They basically, it's almost like the supply chain separates at the private barrel side and the regular product side. But yeah, I was there in June and tasted a couple of those.
Cool. Zofia Mangione asks, since larceny is a wheated bourbon, how do you approach barrel selection and aging differently compared to your rye-based bourbon, since wheated mash bills tend to mature differently?
So I heard one of our former master distillers describe making bourbon as the funnest math equation he's ever done. As I was talking about, we get 27 18-wheelers full of grain a day. We control that process, right? We control how clean the distillery is. You can't make good distillate with a dirty distillery. So we control the entire process until it gets to where it goes into the barrel. And that's the biggest variable, right? Mother Nature. These rick houses that I was talking about earlier are basically wood structures wrapped in tin. They're not open to the elements in the sense that they're getting rained on and snowed on in direct sunlight per se, but there is no temperature control. There's no installation. They are open to what Mother Nature is going to do over the course of their, anywhere from 20 to 36 Kentucky seasons, right? So that's anywhere from 5 to, I think I did the math right, 9 years. So the distillate that we make that becomes larceny is called OFD, Old Fitzgerald distillate, and it goes in the same type of barrels that the distillate that our rye distillate goes in. And there is some strategy, we hope, to where we're placing the barrels. But again, that variable of Mother Nature, as the saying goes, no two barrels are alike. So we'll taste barrels throughout the process. And after 2 to 3 years, they start showing those flavor profiles that lend us to think they're going to start moving in the larceny direction, or the larceny barrel proof direction, or the Old Fitz direction, right? And when you compare it to the ryes, we have a 4-year-old rye that we released, Rittenhouse bottled and bond. We also have a 6-year-old rye, and then we have another rye that's a little bit older. So we're thinking about where we're placing the barrels. So Rittenhouse barrels that we hope are going to become Rittenhouse are going to go up top because it gets hotter up there. Heat rises. It's a much more intense aging. So for Rittenhouse, you're getting a full life of aging in only a 4-year-old product. Whereas Pikesville and Elijah Craig rye, where you're going 2 and in some cases 6 years longer, you're going to go into a more mellow, a lower floor in the rickhouse to age.
Cool. Let's get to a few more questions here. Larry Locke or Latch, sorry, is the old blue truck in front of the distillery at the Heaven Hill Experience have any special meaning to the family?
It is a replication of an old truck that we had at the original distillery. But as far as symbolism to the family, I'm not sure. The only pictures I've seen them in are or a Cadillac, or a convertible Cadillac, which is pretty cool, which I wish they still had.
Matthew Archer says, what's the toughest part of marketing Heaven Hill products for you?
The fact that we don't spend a whole lot on marketing and advertising and walking into places and them saying, who's Heaven Hill? And we're like, well, we're celebrating our 90th year. And we're the largest family owned and operated distilled spirits company. But, you know, you guys are part of the army now. You can be the apostles out there, right? Because it's part of our house style, right? We don't have outside investors. We don't spend a whole ton of money on outside marketing and advertising. We rely on our sales force and sort of a word of mouth. Now that said, we have changed that in the last decade or so. We have Elijah Craig, which is the official bourbon of the PGA of America. So you'll see a lot of Elijah Craig advertising on TV in the next month with the Ryder Cup coming up. We're the official bourbon of the Ryder Cup. Evan Williams is the official bourbon of a handful of top NCAA football programs, NCAA programs, and we do a big push during football season with tailgates at those 7 or 8 schools. So it's starting to change a little bit, but I would imagine I could run down 30 products that we make that maybe you've heard of them, but you didn't know that we made them.
Got it. All right, I want to get to at least 3 or 4 more here, so maybe just like rapid fire answers. Let's see. Sarah Steepleton says the mouthfeel is really lovely, but full and rich, but also smooth considering the proof. Do you attribute this to being straight from the barrel, or is it just an exceptional barrel?
One, it's an exceptional barrel, and 2, we're really good at high proof and extra age. That's not me saying it. I've been told that by bartenders across the country and around the world.
Awesome. John Sessler says, who gets to choose what is going to make up each edition of Parker's Heritage?
We have an experimental team that is tasting through stuff over the course of the year. They meet every 6 weeks and taste through stuff from different years with an eye on the future to figure out where it's going to go. I saw one. What proof does Larceny barrel bourbon at? We barrel everything at 125.
I think that was Mark Horowitz that asked that question. Let's try to get a couple more here. Is there anything that stands out to you, Jack, that you see that you'd want to address?
Let's see. I like from Linda Archer, what proof do you think Larceny is best? I really like the barrel proofs of Larceny that I've had at like 118. I'm not a proof hound. I like to have 2 or 3 drinks when I'm sitting around having whiskey. And I mean, I'm sitting here drinking barrel proof right now, and I'm adding water to it. I don't know if you can see me with my hand, but I'm adding water to it, hopefully to get it to a little bit more palatable place for me.
Awesome. I'm not a proof hound by any means, but if I'm having one, which is probably what I'm going to have today, I'm not adding any water right now. But I understand you got an event to go to after this, so you gotta be careful. All right, maybe we'll do.
I see a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you keep the history of the old yeast strain and open top fermentation alive at Heaven Hill with modern gear and processes? So, I mean, it's modern gear, but it's age-old processes, right? With the new distillery that we brought online in March and are breaking ground on next week, we actually have about 100 by 100 square foot yeast lab. So we will be going back to entirely live yeast at that distillery. So that's a great way to pay homage to that process.
All right, let's do one more because it looks like my battery's about to die on my computer. Okay. What's your favorite unexpected food or cocktail pairing with Larceny that most people wouldn't think to try?
My is a perfect Manhattan. So a split base of sweet vermouth, dry vermouth, and so 2 ounces of larceny, half ounce of each of the vermouths, a dash of bitters, and a lemon peel.
Awesome. Sounds delicious. The cocktail we had was a bluegrass luau, which was kind of a tiki style cocktail, but I love a perfect Manhattan too. So make yourself a perfect Manhattan, or make yourself the bluegrass luau that's on your cocktail card this month. I'm sure both will be delicious. All right, let's run through these, Jack. My computer's about to die, and I think you gotta go to a bar in Mexico City. We all feel really bad for you. So we have the question about the tequila barrels. We have the question about the if you ever are in a barrel tasting and somebody doesn't something special, what do you do with it? We have the question about the blue truck. We have the question about toughest part about marketing. Linda Archer's question about what proof do you think larceny is best? We had the question from Sarah Stevelton about, is this great because it's exceptional, or is it great because it's straight? Well, no, the answer to that question is because it's an exceptional pick that I did. Just kidding. Let's see, and then Kenny N asked the question about the food pairing, and who was the question about the yeast strain?
I just saw it.
Here we go. It says Sophia
Mangione.
Yeah. Cool. So do you have 2 questions picked?
They're so good. I just saw one. So one that I don't think you mentioned, Scott Lemore. Given the history of Old Fitzgerald, how do you decide which barrels are warehouse location? I like that one. And then,
okay, well, can you answer it? Really quick?
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did answer that one. That was the one where I was saying like the no two barrels are like snowflakes, no two are like.
Okay, got it. I skipped that one. Okay, so Scott Lemore. Go ahead, and one more.
Okay. Oop. And then I like Sarah Steepleton's.
The one about the exceptional pick?
Yeah.
Now I have to be the bad guy here. Flattery is everything. So I'm going to go with Sarah for the first place prize for the question about the pick being special because it's a single barrel or just a really good pick. So, and then the second place will go to Scott Lemore for the history of Old Fitzgerald and larceny and which barrels and warehouse locations. So, Sarah and Scott, we will get you get your addresses and we'll get those prizes out for you. And Jack, I know you got to get to an event, but we appreciate your time and hope you have a good evening. And it's bad luck to end these calls without just taking the last sip. So if you need to add water, feel free.
Even with my weird background, you can see I still got some brown water in there. Cheers to y'all. Thank you for joining. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I run into some of you at a Eureka around the way.
Yeah. See you in Hawthorne.
Cheers.